Elementary, my dear Einstein. Introduction. Most reasonably literate laymen tend to accept what scientists preach. We are led to believe that there is clear evidence showing that we are made of stardust, that black holes are portals to new universes, and Earth is orbiting the Sun. They must have done some test, measured some missing mass, or observed Earth's orbit to know these things. Right? Actually, surprisingly, that is not the case. 74% of Americans, 66% of Europeans, and 59% of Australians believe that the Earth orbits the Sun. Of these believers, hardly a soul can explain why they believe it, other than science says so, does it not? That person may recall that Galileo had proved the Church to be wrong, and therefore the Earth is now orbiting the Sun. It was Galileo, right? I read a few books by Stephen Hawking, including A Brief History of Time and The Theory of Everything. I found these books to be quite repetitive, and the most interesting repetition is a disclaimer in which he made a remarkable confession. I'm playing a soundbite from his audiobook, A Brief History of Time.
Now, at first sight, all this evidence that the universe looks the same whichever direction we look in might seem to suggest there is something special about our place in the universe. In particular, it might seem that if we observe all other galaxies to be moving away from us, then we must be at the center of the universe. There is, however, an alternate explanation. The universe might look the same in every direction, as seen from any other galaxy, too. We have no scientific evidence for or against this assumption. We believe it only on grounds of modesty. It would be most remarkable if the universe looked the same in every direction around us, but not around other points in the universe.
End of quote. Between Copernicus and Galileo, Earth had been removed from the center of the universe. Now Hawkins tells us there is no evidence for it. We believe it because of modesty. This is like standing on Table Mountain and concluding, now all this evidence that we have reached the southern point of Africa might seem to suggest there is something special about the location of Table Mountain. There is, however, an alternate explanation. The view from any other mountain may also appear to have reached the southern point of Africa. It would be most remarkable if Africa seemed to end when observed from Table Mountain, but it does not seem to end when observed from Kilimanjaro. We will soon learn that this logic is a fundamental principle of Einstein's theories, but the primary difference between these two absurdities is that the one can be tested. In fact, Africa does not end at Kilimanjaro, but fortunately for the modesty of Stephen Hawking, we cannot go to another galaxy to verify their assumption. All we can do is to believe it. In fact, we have to believe it because the scientific revolution is based on the assumption that Earth is not at any special location, least of all, not at the center of the universe. I will attempt to help you discover why science expects us to believe their fancy theories about frames of reference, relative time and clocks and twins and wormholes that we thought had something to do with science. Aristotle is quoted to have said, "A tiny error in the beginning grows 1,000-fold by the end." By believing one thing without scientific evidence, on the grounds of modesty, while the obvious truth is staring you in the face, may not seem like much of an error in the beginning. But when your modesty requires you to believe one absurdity after the other, one should realize it is time to check your assumptions. Of course, you can believe what you want, but you will soon be deprived of the deception that you were compelled by evidence. Chapter 1. Our Place in the Universe. The currently accepted view among almost all scientists is that we inhabit a second-class planet called Earth, which moves around a second-class star called the Sun, which circles around a second-class galaxy called the Milky Way, which is lost in the vastness of space like a grain of sand in the Sahara Desert. This is called the mediocrity principle. It depicts man's view of ourselves and our place in the universe. Carl Sagan thought we live on an insignificant planet of a humdrum star lost in a galaxy, tucked away in some forgotten corner of the universe. Paul Sartre contributes, even if there was a God, he would not find us. By contrast, God revealed the teleology of creation very comprehensibly. He hath chosen us in him before the foundation of the world. Ephesians 1:4. To support people, he made the earth. Genesis 1:1. To support earth, he made the heavens. To populate the heavens, he made stars. To support life on earth, he made the greater light to rule the day. To fascinate Adam, he made Eve. To make sure he can easily find earth, he placed it at the center of the universe. It seems unlikely to start with such a sensible model and then to end in the chaos of postmodern science. But we managed. In the Garden of Eden, Eve met a friend who claimed to be a nutritional expert with much advice on alternate dietary options. This included fruit from the tree in the middle of the garden. Ever since the outcome of this guidance, man has tended to follow a basic philosophy. Listen clearly to what the Creator says and do the opposite. The claims of Scripture appear self-evident, confirmed by observation and senses. So the ancients knew the earth to be stationary at the center of the universe, and everything else seemed to be circling around it. That idea came from observing and believing what their own eyes and senses told them to be true. The earth was obviously not moving, whereas everything else obviously was. There is nothing unscientific about this view. To be unscientific is to have better evidence and ignore it. We would have to wait a few thousand years before arriving at that strategy. In contrast with Judaic scripture, the Greeks revered a pantheon of gods competing for position and ranking among themselves and in the minds of men. The Olympian gods were the principal deities of ancient Greece, but the sun god Helios was not among them. To men like Pythagoras, this was an obvious mistake. How can gods like Demeter and Aphrodite bring fruit and fruitfulness without the light from Helios? Clearly, Helios was the most magnificent of all the gods and should be at the center of the universe. Contrary to modern perception, the center of the universe is a very special place. To Pythagoras, it had spiritual significance. Newton believed it to be wherever the center of gravity is. Hawkins believed it is everywhere. All would agree, though, if there is a center of the universe, it would be stationary, and its absolute velocity through space would be zero. Imagine two bugs on a water wheel. One sits by the hub at the center, one sits on the rim. After one revolution, the center bug has had no displacement, while the bug at the rim has moved around the wheel. Both bugs believe themselves to be at rest, but if either of these bugs had a way of measuring absolute rest or motion, the one who gets a zero reading will accurately conclude that it is at the center of the water wheel. In the same way, the center of the universe cannot be in motion. It cannot orbit anything, just like the hub of a water wheel cannot orbit the rim. To Einstein, this concept posed a serious obstacle, and he would sarcastically call it a preferred frame of reference, implying that everything was relative and there is no point of absolute rest. Unburdened by excessive imagination, most lay people know from living in reality that everything has a center. The city has a center, the shopping center has a center, the dinner table has a center. In fact, if we tried, we cannot imagine anything without a center. So why would the universe not have a center? To be without a center is to be infinite. Can someone explain infinity? Keep listening. He will soon explain the Trinity and what women want. Like the bug on the water wheel, Pythagoras lacked a means of measuring absolute rest. To be sure, he saw no need for it, as he knew Earth had to be in motion in order to orbit the Sun. Measuring the rate of Earth's movement, v, was of some interest, but it would require measuring the speed of light. This would be achieved by Albert Michelson in 1879. Pythagoras was born 2,450 years before that, but like most people, his lack of data did not prevent him from making conclusions. To his credit, he did not pretend to have measured or observed the Sun at the center. His reasoning was philosophical, believing as he did that the Sun was the most magnificent of all the gods. It is not unreasonable that it should occupy the central position of the cosmos. Johannes Kepler would confess the same in his book Astronomia Nova, meaning New Astronomy, published in 1609. In truth, there was nothing new about the heliocentric model of the universe. He should have titled it Astronomia Antiqua, as it originated with Pythagoras 2,200 years earlier.